brought to you by IOCO, Africa's leading integrated technology services company. It's time for Tech Talk. Buy now, pay later is quickly becoming a preferred way to pay for South African shoppers. New data from PayFast shows usage of these flexible payment options doubled in 2025 as consumers look for ways to manage rising costs and merchants seek to boost sales. Business Days, Mudiwa Kavaza joins us now for more. Mudiwa, thanks so much for your time today. Usage of those services moved from 3% to 6% versus, of course, card payments accounting for what? Over 50% of online purchases. That just shows that there's still more room to grow here.
No, there's definitely, more room to grow. There was a lot, that was actually unpacked, in that report that came out from PayFast by Network, their state of pay for 2025. One of the big things that they were talking about is the fact that merchants that have switched over to digital payments actually reported, higher earnings, higher revenues because people can, pay by card. But I particularly found the fact that your buy now, pay later usage has doubled between 2024 and 2025. It's small, relative to where your broader cards are because you're going from 3% of spend to 6% of spend. But that also shows you just how fast, people are looking for some of those flexible payment options. And I do think that Payflex did say it, that this is a trend that needs to be watched. And as someone that has seen the growth of buy now, pay later in South Africa for the last couple of years, I do, agree with them that we do need to watch this trend.
What I've found interesting is how these BNPL platforms make money, considering that they take the burden of the credit, right? They send the money to the merchants. And I'd just like to understand how they then make the money. Do they make the money through the merchants, more merchants taking up those services?
There's two big things that, I would say you need to understand from how they make money. The first one is the fact that the deal with the merchant is basically this. Taoleng or Muriwa would otherwise not have bought because they don't have all the money to buy a pair of shoes, this phone, or whatever it is. So merchant, because of our platform, we've given you a sale. So in return for that sale, we'll give you, let's call it 97 or 98% of the purchase price of that item. And then the 2% becomes, where we're making our money on that particular sale. I'm just using that as an example, yes. But that's the first way in which a buy now, pay later provider is making money. The merchant is accepting a slightly lower rate.
Okay.
And then, obviously that ends up being money in the pocket of the buy now, pay later provider. Because when you as the customer come and pay, you're paying at 100%. The merchant costs the 97 or 98.
Okay.
So that difference is what the buy now, pay later provider gets. That's the first piece. Second piece is that these the paybacks tend to be interest free, and that sounds great, and it is great, for a lot of people. However, the danger comes when you don't pay, because now we enter the territory of penalties, right? And some of those penalties can be quite hefty. So I would probably say that those are two of the big ways in which the guys are making their money.
And what does that rate look like, if you have any insight into that, in terms of, consumers defaulting on their payments?
I'll be honest, I don't have that particular number, on hand. What I do understand is that your payback is at a much higher rate than, it's at a higher interest rate, if I remember correctly, that than what you typically get, if you are going to take, like, let's say, a normal loan, something like that. Because once again, it's a penalty, right? It's a
Yeah.
punishment.
Yeah.
So you need to feel it for it to make sense.
I've been wondering to myself what the next leg for buy now, pay later providers look like. Yes, there's still more room to grow with the current services. I know, the likes of a Paychest now has Pay Stretch, where you have 12 months to pay the purchase, and there's also an initiation fee. There's also interest. Are we going to see that become a trend? That, of course, very similar to, the store cards, where you can have, for example, a card from Foschini, and you can go and buy clothes on credit, pay it off, your charged interest month on month.
I would say that the things that you're mentioning are probably all part of the trend set. You also have the likes of, Pay Just Now that allow for buy now, pay later, in store, because a lot of people look at buy now, pay later as a way to increase online sales,
Yes.
because that's where we typically see it happening. But there are a couple of providers that have come up, with solutions that will work in store. The other piece that I would just mention is maybe just touching very quickly on the history around this. Buy now, pay later actually came up in, some of the other countries and gained popularity in places like Australia, because in Australia, and that's one of the reasons why the initial models were you pay every 2 weeks, because in a place like Australia, people get paid salaries every 2 weeks as
Okay.
opposed to every month.
I
So
found that
the buy
very
now
odd, I
pay
must say.
Yes. So the buy now pay later providers basically synchronized themselves to how people were earning money in those types of territories. So when it comes to a place like, South Africa, you then have to localize a little bit, because people are getting paid monthly as opposed to every 2 weeks. So a person might not have money in the middle of the month, for example. So I think the next wave of innovation is, some of those localizations that have already happened.
Okay.
But, where else can some of these providers actually meet the South African consumer specifically, on what you call this, where they are? I'll give you this as an example. They don't call it buy now, pay later, but in the telecom space, we've seen that. What's called airtime advance has become
Yes.
a huge thing, right? But if you really think about it, that's a buy now, pay later model, right? You don't have the money right now, and the network is able to say, hey, we'll give you 5, 10, 20 rand of airtime. And then, when you recharge, we'll take, our money away from you. So I do think that there's all those little innovations that can be used, where you can understand where's the customer, where's the consumer, where are the pain points, and how can you extend value to them in those ways.
And there's a very thin line when you think of innovation and regulation, right? Critics, of course, of BNPL services have pushed back on that model, saying it's promotion of impulsive spending habits, and they've also pointed to the lack of regulation. How do these players then balance those concerns?
One of the big issues there is that whatever the critics say, the consumer is under pressure. That's just the truth.
Yep.
Right. And when you see growth in something like your buy now, pay later, it points to the fact that the consumer is looking for more, flexible payment options. One of the things that PayFast noted in this report is, in addition to buy now, pay later, there's also been an upswing in the use of MobiCred, for example. So all of those are those, more flexible, lending and credit options that are there. So there is, a lot of criticism against it. One of the other major criticisms is that South Africa is already a country that is over indebted on the consumer side, and that this is, yet something else that is locking consumers into that cycle of, even more debt, right? So yes, the criticisms are definitely there. I think the other one is the fact that this is something that is not going to be able to be used for anything and everything. It's
Yes.
for specific, specific use cases. That's been, something else there. But at the end of the day, if we're going to try and solve some of these things, the criticisms that are leveled, they are fundamental things that need to be had around increasing the purchasing power that consumers have, increasing salaries, making sure you have more people that are employed. All of these fundamental issues that need to be addressed. Otherwise, from a market needs point of view,
Yeah.
consumers are looking for these types of things. And the fact that they literally scoop them up as they're coming onto the market shows that there's appetite from some of these things. So criticizing buy now pay later, as valid as it is, you might have more credence actually addressing some of the root causes of why, people are willing to take on, these services in the first place.
Yeah, great insights as usual, Mudiwa. Thank you so much for your time today. That was Business Days, Mudiwa Kavaza. Brought to you by IOCO, Africa's leading integrated technology services company.